Welcome everyone to Comics from the Multiverse, episode 330 or 330, 330. I don't know which way I'm supposed to say that, to be honest, but I'm Peter, and joining me as always is Matt.
Hey, what's cracking?
This is a DC Comics podcast. We get together and we talk about the DC Comics we read this week. Coming up on this week's show, we have Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths, issue 6, The New Golden Age, issue 1, Batman vs. Robin, issue 3, Superman Son of Kal-El, issue 17, Batgirls, issue 12, WildC.A.T.s, issue 1, and The Nice House in the Lake, issue 11. And I didn't check with Matt if there's anything else he read that I've missed, so is there anything?
Nope.
No? Okay.
Nope.
Alright, good stuff.
Nothing this week.
That's what's coming up on the show then, so hopefully everyone's excited about some of those books, and we'll get cracking into it.
Unless you want me to, I did get caught up on Monkey Prince, so unless you want me to talk about that, because that kind of factors into one of the books this week.
It does a little bit, but I mean,
yeah.
Maybe I'll just save it for the next issue's out.
Okay, that works.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense to me. So yeah, that's what's coming up on the show. Obviously a little bit of news to talk about. But before we get to that, there's always time for a ComiXology top 10. I think that's the quickest I've gotten to that in a while.
It is. It kind of took me by surprise. I didn't have time to groan.
I didn't have time for you to railroad me off the track into nonsense. Yeah. You can do that later. But yeah, we'll look at the ComiXology top 10 for the week. So yeah, we look at Tuesday's figures, which is obviously the DC books, and then the books released on Wednesday. We'll have a glance at the rest of the industry afterwards. But yes, just so as of right now, what are the top 10 best-selling DC comics on ComiXology? Matt, do you have a guess for number 1?
I'm gonna go Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths, number 6.
You would be correct.
Bada bang.
Big event, no surprise.
Mm-hmm.
Can you guess number 2?
I'm gonna say Batman vs. Robin, number 3.
Nope.
Dang. Okay, let me look. Let's go with the Golden Age.
It is the Golden Age. It turns out Geoff Johns still has some name recognition amongst DC fans because they did well. And it's very much a prelude to his GSA run that's coming up. So we'll be talking about that in a little bit. But yeah, Batman vs. Robin issue 3 is the third best-selling book as of right now. Number 4, a little surprising this one, WildC.A.T.s issue 1. Doing that
Revenge of the 90s.
Yeah, well, I mean, the fact that it beat number 5, which is Superman Son of Kal-El, is quite interesting. I mean, I realize that book's got a bit of a backlash from certain groups, but you know.
And it's not like this is a Diamond thing where there's a bunch of variant covers.
Yeah.
You know, this is all just strictly digital. So, yeah. Yeah,
that's true. I do wonder like how much the physical chart that we don't get to see, like how much all the variants help some of these books, like over the put them over some of the other ones.
Yeah. I just know my shop got a couple of them, but it's because they were requested by people. So I'm sure, some older WildC.A.T.s fans came into the shops wanting Jim Lee covers to feel like the 90s again.
Yeah, number 6 is The Death of Superman 30th Anniversary issue, which we never looked at because it was a huge issue and I had plenty of books, so I was fine without, but cool all the same. Number 7 is Nice House in the Lake, issue 11. Number 8 is Batman Incorporated, issue 2.
I'll take that, Ghostmaker.
Yeah, number 9 is Wonder Woman 793. That is quite low for the ongoing Wonder Woman book.
That is free falling.
Yeah, clearly a lot of people kind of felt the same way we did and stopped reading it. And then number 10 is Batman Urban Legends. So there you go.
Yep, and that's rounding up. That's coming to an end soon.
Yeah. So. The only sort of, you've got a few books after that. You get I Am Batman, Teen Justice, and Batgirls. Batgirls is pretty low. That's like number 13 out of the DC books, which is a bit of a shame because I do think it's a bit better now after its first start.
Yeah, well, maybe some people would rather trade weight too.
Maybe.
Right? They got through the first, bunch.
It's entirely possible that's a book that is actually doing better physically because of the variant covers, because there's a lot of variants with the different Batgirls on it and stuff like that. So I wonder if it's doing well in the comic stores, but that is the DC side of the list. But we will have a glance at Wednesday's books and see what the rest of the industry is doing. So any guess as to what the number 1 book from the rest of the industry is?
I see there's a Spider-Man book out, but there's also an X book, so I don't know which to go with. But I'm just gonna go with Spider-Man 13.
No, it's not Spider-Man.
Okay.
In fact, that's number 4. So
Wow.
Yeah, number 1 is Axe Judgment Day Omega.
Oh man, I didn't even see that there. Where the hell's that one on League of Comic Geeks?
And then number 2 is Fantastic Four issue 1.
Okay.
So you get that. And then number 3 is Sabretooth and the Exiles issue 1.
What is this? I used to love the Exiles, unless this is a new, a new take on it.
Yeah, by Victor Laval is the writer. I don't know who that is, but every so often this happens where like Marvel, because I've not looked at Marvel in a while, there'll be like a bunch of writers that I've not heard of that are on a lot of books all of a sudden. Number 4.
Yeah, so I was just gonna say, this is not like an Exiles traveling through the multiverse. Like, I thought these are people that were exiled from Krakoa, so it's kind of like X-Men Thunderbolts, if you will.
I see.
Yeah.
Number 4 is Amazing Spider-Man, as you said.
Okay.
Number 5 is Legion of X, issue 7. Number 6 is Marauders, issue 8. Number 7 is Avengers, issue 62. It says something. It says something that Sabretooth and the Exiles, Legion of X, and Marauders are all selling better than just the regular flagship Avengers book.
Yeah.
By Jason Aaron, no less. So,
well, he's 62 issues in, so I'm sure the bloom's off the rose there a little bit.
Aye, but some of these like B and C X-Men books selling.
Man, X-Men fans read everything though.
I know, but like Avengers, you would think with the movies that Avengers name value would be so high that it would still always outsell something like Marauders, but it's not. And I'm not necessarily saying anything about the quality of either that book or Marauders. I don't know. I'm not reading either of them, but I think it's interesting. It makes me feel like they've not capitalized on these, billion-dollar movies that they're literally pumping out into comic sales figures. But hey, whatever. I mean, I guess the last 10 years, if nothing else, have proven that it doesn't really change much, the movies. It gets some people into the comics, but it doesn't necessarily shift which comics are being read, bizarrely. But anyway, number 8 is Wolverine, issue 27. Number 9 is Spider-Man, issue 2. That's the one that Dan Slott's doing with Mark Bagley. And then number 10 is Moon Knight, issue 17.
Hey.
So
not even any of the independents poking through.
Oh, not in the top 10, no. In fact, not even the top 15. Like, the next 5 are all Marvel as well. You got a Star Wars book, Captain America book, another Spider-Man book, and then a Venom book, and then a Ghost Rider book. You have to go all the way down to 16 on Wednesday to do a Powerbomb issue 6.
Okay, I gotta get caught up on that. I've read the first 2. I have them all. I just need to get and clear some time. Where did Dark Ride come up at?
Dark Ride? That looks like it's number 20. Oh, sorry, no, number 25. And I'll roll down.
Gotcha.
Sorry. I mean, to be fair, I don't think any of the indie books in this particular Wednesday, just from a glance, it doesn't seem like there's any big ones, except maybe the latest issue of Turtles, which is quite far down.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it's not a lot of big titles that I'm reckoning. Whereas next week, this is the sort of thing, if it was issue 1 next week, I'd say we should try it. But unfortunately, it's issue 26 or something like that. But Everything's Killing the Children is out next week. So I expect that to crack the top 10 next week.
Gotcha.
But, there was nothing like that this week that's like, oh, that's huge. Everyone's reading that. So there you go. That's basically it. That's the ComiXology top 10 for the week. So good stuff. All right. Okay, well, we have to get sad for a minute because there's one bit of real news this week, and it's not happy news. This hit me like a ton of bricks yesterday. Kevin Conroy, who played Batman in the Batman animated series and several of the animated movies and the Arkham video games and probably other projects that I can't even begin to list.
I feel like he's our generation's Batman more than any of the movie actors, at least to me.
It's not even our generation, I don't think. But anyway, he passed away at the age of 66. this week, and he was sick for a while, so it wasn't like a surprise to his loved ones or anything like that. But obviously, it's the sort of thing, it stays kind of private from the general public. So yeah, kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. It's one of those things where obviously it's a bit young. 66 is not an old age to be passing away at. He's a kind of a fundamental. If you're a DC Comics fan, if you're a Batman fan, he's kind of a fundamental sound of your life.
When I read Batman, that's the voice that I hear. Always has been.
I don't know if I hear any particular voice when I read necessarily, but it's regardless, like the animated series is very much, I think, what made. Not necessarily what made me a Batman fan, but it's the thing that when I look back at those early years, it's the one that stood the test of time, whereas other Batman things at the time haven't. And that's going back so far. Like he was doing the video games, the Arkham games. They started in what, 2009, but Arkham Knight, the fourth one, was 2015. That's only 7 years ago, and he was still doing some of the movie projects up until relatively recently. So it's. He's had this long tenure. He was basically playing the character for about 30 years, all things considered.
And he showed up on Crisis on Infinite Earths, right? On the CW as Batman?
Yeah, he did. He played what do we call it? Kingdom Come Bruce Wayne, effectively. I mean, it kind of swerved into not being exactly, but he looked like that version with the braces and all that stuff. So, yeah. So he got to even do it in live action a little bit. And that was only, 2-3 years ago? Yeah.
So, he's one of the few ones that I met. I met him at a Comic-Con years ago. And just couldn't have been nicer. I have a signed thing. It's framed in my bedroom. It's the one Batman thing I have on display. But I mean, he is my favorite Batman. A lot of fond memories of watching the show, and again, I hear his voice when I read the character. And in fact, someone standing behind me that I was talking to in line told him that, and he looked a little bit weirded, but also like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, just super nice dude when I got to meet him, and seemed to love meeting all the fans.
I mean, that's everything I've been seeing on Twitter from like people who knew him was they're just all praising how nice he is and how how much of a kind guy he was and whatnot. I actually ended up watching Mask of the Phantasm last night. Just it was something that was coming up anyway on stream, but I kind of like shifted it around because it was like, well, with this news, we should do it tonight.
And that's a really good performance by him too, because he's playing Batman a little bit differently in Mask of the Phantasm. It's an actual like role. He's not just doing the cartoony stuff. Yeah,
and it sort of tries to do a little bit of like the animated series version of his origin effectively is in that movie. So it's interesting to see all the different sort of portrayals. And obviously he does the old age Batman and Batman Beyond, and you got all these different versions that he's done through the years. But there's kind of a through line to them all, where they all feel like they're part of the same world because it's him. Him and Mark Hamill. Yeah,
for sure. I remember when the news dropped, there was a bunch of weirder sites that were tweeting that out, and with everything that's been going on with Twitter, it was one of those things like I need to know from a proper source before I can buy this, because it did seem to come out of left field. And then once I had seen Paul Dini, basically confirm it, that's when I got sad.
A lot of these less reputable places, they'll get a wind of it before anyone wants to actually say anything, so you have to doubt it for a little bit. But I think by the time I saw it, though, there was already on like some of the major places. So very very sad times. He's a legend. Don't really have much more to add, but it's funny because we're getting to that age now that some people from our childhood are really starting to go. I think the one that hurt me or hit me the hardest first was probably Bill Paxton, who also sort of died in his sort of early 60s. Yeah. And that was just like, whoa. I was not ready for him to go yet. He was still quite healthy, seemingly. Like, why all of a sudden is he not here anymore? So Kevin Conroy's adding to that list of like, okay, people I grew up caring about are starting to pass away, and it really sucks. So
yeah, when Harrison Ford goes, I'm gonna be a wreck, and I've never even met him. You know,
I mean, at least he's in his 80s though.
Yeah, I know, but it's always one of those times, and like he's had so many plane accidents and whatnot. That I always feel like it's gonna come at any time. But I don't know, he's got luck on his side or whatever. He's got guardian angel. But yeah, no, he's that's an actor that's very important to my upbringing. And yeah. But yeah, I'm trying to think of some of the others that hit me like that. I mean, Carrie Fisher, that one hit me. Robin Williams, but that was years ago at this point. So, it's just weird mourning a celebrity because they're not, you don't know them personally. However, we spend a lot of time with these people. Like you said, we were talking about Conroy. All the times he's been Batman, right? You spent a lot of time with him, at least with his voice. So it's just one of these weird things of human experience.
Yeah, it's just this kind of, it's not the same as knowing someone personally, but like when someone who you've like connected with because you've connected through their work, their art, if it meant something to you, there is more than just a stranger dying. But it is, I don't know, it's a weird middle ground. It still hits you a little bit. So but yeah, so Kevin Conroy passed away. It's sad to hear. And obviously couldn't not mention it on a DC Comics podcast because he's kind of important to a lot of our childhoods at this point. So yeah, well, we can.
Any brighter news?
I don't think so, to be honest. No.
Is that it this week?
I didn't see any other news.
Let me just skim this so we don't go out on a downer.
Yeah, I mean, I think solicits are next week, so they're probably saving stuff for that.
So far, when I go to Newsarama, all of the news things are Marvel. There's no DCAC. So that is kind of hilarious. Yeah. So shoot.
Yeah, I don't got any excitement.
I got nothing.
Yeah, I don't know.
I just checked. Nothing.
It is what it is. But there you go. These weeks come. You just have to take them and get through them, and hopefully come out on the other side feeling better. So,
roll with the punches.
Exactly. So yeah. So I guess we'll just get to the books then, because I don't, it's weird to segue into tangenty things from that. So I think we'll just go straight into the comics this week and get diving into things. So, Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths, issue 6, Joshua Williamson writing with Daniel Sampere on the art. The penultimate issue in the event, and I have to say that like there's stuff in this issue I really liked. There's also some things in this issue that felt a little out of left field. I don't want to say tacked on per se, but it kind of felt like some. It felt like by the end of this issue, we had dealt with Pariah, and we seem to have shifted like the main focus of the threat onto someone who didn't feel like he was as big a deal in the book.
No, but when we get to that point, I appreciate Williamson trying to make it feel like a big deal.
Sure.
Because I really like that reveal and with what that character says. But yeah, it almost seems like the Pariah story ran out of juice. And it got fixed when the Justice League finally shows back up, but it never felt fulfilling. So I don't know.
I think the other problem with the Pariah story ending is that it ends because the MacGuffin that a group of characters got in a one shot that wasn't that good, I think, ultimately ended up just being this like instant win device in this issue, at least as far as Pariah goes. Obviously, the Great Darkness is still infecting someone, and we still have to deal with that in the final issue. And I'm sure there'll be a big thing that happens for the ending.
Yeah. But it definitely felt like it wrapped up too neatly, too quickly with Pariah, because we had this whole issue with the one you're talking about where they used the green to go into the darkness and whatnot. This whole concept that Pariah is using the Great Darkness, not the Great Darkness using Pariah. And it just, when Pariah gets what he wants, which is the return of his Earth, he just kind of disappears. Like he does the Flash ending from the original Crisis where he disintegrates, but you're assuming he's going to his Earth there. But yeah, I was like, this is going way too quick, I felt.
Yeah, there's things I like in this issue. I like all the various Titan-esque characters fighting the big fight. I like probably the best moment of the issue is John trying to buy time for the others to use the device, and he gets the shit kicked out of him to the point where he's about to get killed by Doomsday. And that's what, and it's very telegraphed. You can see, know exactly what's going to happen when you turn the page. That's when Superman's going to be back and help him and save him.
But it still lands. It's still a great moment.
Yeah, you turn the page and Clark's holding Doomsday's fist, and it's like, no, he's here now. And, it's a great big dramatic moment. It's really well done. Yeah. There's a weird. So early on in the book, right? We're at the Justice League, and they're talking about getting back to the main Earth, and something to do with using the light of the Green Lantern ring or whatever to get back. Blah blah blah.
The brave and the bold, thing.
So what was all this thing with Ollie? So he gives this speech about how we have to risk it and try and get home, which is fine. But then there's kind of this weird implication that he's at risk by doing so, like specifically him.
So the way that I took it is it's kind of like when you're reading World's Finest, where someone has to shut the door, right? And it's almost like he was volunteering to be the one that gets left behind. That's how I read it. But I don't know because I didn't get any of that information beforehand.
Yeah,
right?
I just this felt kind of weird to me. Like I don't think it clearly defined what exactly was going on.
I felt like I was missing a page.
Yeah.
Right.
Very odd, very odd. I mean, I appreciated Barry and Hal swapping catchphrases, when they were getting powering up and stuff, but that was a bit weird for me, I thought. I appreciate all these C-listers coming in to help with the big fight during the war, and then immediately getting infected with the Great Darkness, just instantly. Sorry, Firestorms.
Boom, boom.
Sorry, Blue Beetle. Your efforts were in vain.
Yeah.
I got a good chuckle out of that.
Yeah. Well, and I like too that it's the Titans that are kind of left standing, right? And it's looking at this in a meta context. It's Williamson saying Nightwing is still central to the DCU, and he's the last line of defense here. But so the fact that the Justice League come up to support him. I really like that moment as well.
Yeah, like I say, the best moment is probably not only Superman showing up to block Doomsday from punching John, but just the build up to it where John's remembering these moments from his past as he's fighting Darkseid and Ares and all these major villains. He's
getting the utter crap kicked out of him, and he's having these happy memories, and you feel like, oh, this is it for John. Again, but even though it's telegraphed, it's still done effectively. Williamson and Sampere. But it was a weird issue because I felt like I was missing something, but it was still like you said, it still had those big moments that it does well. So,
this felt like some of that weaker later Flash run Williamson was creeping in a bit here, where it just didn't feel well enough to establish some of the things that were happening.
Yeah, I don't know. Superman shows up. That's where the story kind of is.
So the big ending is that the Great Darkness is passed into, or at least is still around inside Deathstroke. So now Deathstroke's going bananas, and he's got Dick by the throat. He's got his daughter by the throat, and he's saying that I'm not done till all of you are dead. But this just feels so weird though, because the entire story's been about Pariah doing his thing and controlling everyone. And now all of a sudden we're shifting to Deathstroke as if he's the main bad guy. I don't know. It's a bit weird.
Right. So for me, the way that I interpreted all this was Deathstroke was the one that Pariah was acting through, right? He was the one that was building the army. And so whereas Pariah was the one that was corrupting the Great Darkness, now that mentality has shifted to Deathstroke because he says that his contract isn't fulfilled. Which that's the thing that I really liked at that last page. Is because that's, always been his thing, is he's going to finish out, he's as good as his word. He's going to finish the job. And so I don't know how they're going to get out of this with the Great Darkness. If there's, that magic wind machine can work on Deathstroke, because what does Deathstroke want besides to win? But yeah, he also had this really good moment with Gar, where he basically tells him that he'll actually end him this time. Last time was to test his limits, and I thought that was really good. But yeah, he's just maniacal there at the end, saying that he's going to finish out his contract. And I was like, all right, that's a little bit weird, but I appreciate the moment nonetheless.
Yeah, I just feel like there was a complete shift at the end where it's trying to like I just don't care about this cliffhanger. It just feels like such a... If this was an earlier issue cliffhanger, that'd be fine. But the fact that this comes after seemingly Pariah's been dealt with just makes it feel like, wait, this is the cliffhanger at the final issue. This feels like so deflating when it should be like the final big ramp up before the... I was expecting them to hold off on the Justice League return until the last page to give you this big hopeful cliffhanger before it goes into the final issue. Right. And instead, we kind of like do all that quite easily, and then it's just, oh, now Deathstroke's kind of in charge of everything. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be more to it next issue, but as far as this cliffhanger on its own goes, I'm just kind of deflated, which is a shame. I didn't want to feel that way. So... well, there's some really great moments in this issue that are some of the best of the entire book, in terms of the series. But it's also probably the most disappointing issue as a whole because it is so deflating by the end to me. Yeah. So I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Yeah. Sometimes I always feel like when you have one of these, the penultimate issue should be the big climax, and this felt like we didn't get that. Because I feel like issue 7 should be kind of the come down and the reestablishing of the new status quo. And other creators have done that effectively when they have the 7 issues. Here, it just felt like it felt to... Well, I don't say nothing.
I would say it does do the climax, because the climax is them beating Pariah. It's now pretending that there's another big thing to do.
Right, and that's what I mean. Is but the climax didn't have it didn't feel fulfilling. Like, Pariah just disappears. So... there's a climax there, but it doesn't feel like the climax, at least to me. So...
I know, it's regardless of how it feels. I'm just saying that is technically the climax of what the story's actually been about up until this point. And I'm sure there'll be some stuff in the final issue that makes me sort of reconsider that, but at least right now, this is probably this is the lowest I felt at the end of one of these issues, just because it feels like it's... tacking on some extra story rather than feeling like it ended its story in a big way and we're going to have an epilogue issue, which would be fine. I'd be down with that because there's usually a lot of stuff to clear up after a big event like this, so an epilogue issue makes a lot of sense. This instead feels like a weird swerve to have another issue with a big fight, and I don't think I need another big fight. Like, I'm fine with not having a big fight after this. Like, we've done plenty of fight, it's fine. Like, it would be... I mean, the art's very good. Sampere's, he's been solid throughout. He obviously gets to do a lot of different characters here. He gets to do a lot of the villains as well. His big 2-page spread of the Justice League with the Green Lantern Corps returning obviously is very pretty. It's a very, John's event style 2-page spread. Obviously the big moment where Superman blocks Doomsday Punch looks really nice. You've got all the sort of rocks flying up in the foreground. You've got the sort of circular motion. You can sort of feel the shock wave of the punch being blocked coming off of it. It's all very nice stuff. So yeah, the art's pretty good throughout. I enjoyed the art quite a bit. Yeah. So anything to add?
No, nothing. I mean, it's Sampere. Like, it's it's good. But yeah, I'm trying to go back. There was one page. I read this earlier in the week, so I have to look. Oh, it's the page where Darkseid tears Frankenstein in two. And that looks disgusting in the best way. So Sampere gets to have a little bit of fun with stuff like that.
I'll make one. This is a very minor critique, but on the section where it's the Justice League before they come home, so they're in whatever Earth they're still on.
Yeah.
There's a sort of further back shot where I didn't know who someone was talking to, because it turned out it's Batman, because compared to the other panel, it's the purple cape that Batman's wearing in this weird alternate Earth, but there's no ears on this like smaller panel, So it looks like some sort of purple Dr. Midnight or something from behind. And it's one of those things that threw me for a second. I'm like, who's that? And I was, oh no, it's Batman. Okay.
Yeah, you're talking on the in between the Wally and Hal pages or panels. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a very minor thing. It's a minor critique.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to be too harsh about it, but
for sure.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. No. It's again, it's good, not great. I would say this whole issue.
Okay. All right. What are you rating the Dark Crisis issue 6?
I'm gonna give this a 7.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with I'll go 6.5. There's things in it I really like, but there's also some weird choices and stuff that just makes it feel less structurally sound as an event book. It feels like it's I don't know. It is reminding me of some of the weird choices Williamson's made before in other books that have left me feeling like, not that he doesn't know what he's doing, but like it's almost like he's trying to like go against like traditional structuring in an arc for the sake of being different. But there's a reason why, unless you are a genius, there's a reason why sticking to the established structure is why you do it. But whatever.
Well, it was like I learned in film school, right? Is you want to follow the rules until you're confident that you can break them for a reason.
Yes.
Yeah. So in here, it's you still need to follow the rules, because when you do stuff like this, when you break the rules, but it doesn't look like it's justified, it just kind of leaves people confused. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, The New Golden Age, issue 1, Geoff Johns writing, and there's like 20
numerous
artists.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of artists credited on this book.
Well, and I feel like too they added all of the art in the back half of it, which is a lot of like what is it? Secret file pages.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like those are a lot of different artists as well, because the art's pretty consistent throughout this. So, because I was looking for breaks, like, when they go to different time streams or whatever we're calling them, you can tell the art change. But other than that, it's all fairly consistent. So.
Just for the record, here's a list of the artists. Diego Olorterga and JP Mayer are together, and then you got Scott Hanna, Jerry Ordway, Steve Lieber, Todd Nuck, Scott Collins, Victor Bogdanovich, Brandon Peterson, and Gary Frank. So yeah, very good. That's a lot of names. That's a lot of names. So this is a kind of a wild book. This is doing it. So I'm not entirely sure, like, is this set in continuity before things changed? Is this set in an alternate Earth kind of thing? It's a bit unclear right now. Obviously, you've got a little bit of, what do we call it? Doomsday Clock.
Yep, there's a little Doomsday Clock, a little bit of Flashpoint Beyond.
Yeah.
In here. So, and a lot of Justice Society from different interpretations.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the main thing in the book. It's basically going through these different time periods, and it jumps around a lot. I actually have an article up from Newsarama that sort of puts them in order, just in case we want to look at that. But we start off with young Helena Wayne, which is about 10 years in the future. And she talks about this red-headed, or ginger menace, I should say. This villain who, like, sometimes she sees in the corner of her eye that is kind of creepy and freaks her out, and she wants rid of him. And then as the story goes on, we get these different slices of time from the JSA history, and some of it's about Dr. Fate kind of seeing some of the future, and how this ginger character seems to be going through time backwards and killing every iteration of the JSA, always starting with Dr. Fate. So that's a summary of the whole thing, because it's hard to kind of like tease it out the way the book does in conversation. So that's just me kind of, that's kind of where we get to by the end. That's what this character's doing. So it's this. Yeah, and here, this is the big threat, Yeah,
he reminds me of a younger Per Degaton, who's an old school Justice Society. So I'm sure there'll be relations to there, because it feels like the one thing I can count on when Johns tackles the Justice Society is it's always about legacy, and it's always the younger heroes working with the older heroes, and we get that a lot here. and then the fact that we know this is about the missing 13. You know, these 13 characters we've never heard of before. And they all seem to be sidekick / legacy characters. You know, it would not surprise me if that's who this Ginger Menace ends up being, is someone, you know, it's kind of a legacy that's trying to do what their predecessor couldn't do, and that's to destroy the Justice Society, especially with timey-wimey shenanigans.
Yeah, the other part of this is you've got the Time Masters going back through time. It seems like they have fixed time and brought the JSA back, which might mean that that's in the regular continuity that they've brought them back, but they're acknowledging that there's these 13 sidekicks are missing. Like, they've not quite succeeded in bringing everyone back that they intended to. So that's something that's kind of teased throughout the book as well. So this is one of these weird things where it does remind me a little bit of a Doomsday Clock issue in the way it's jumping around, and the way it's like hinting at a lot of big things that, you know, the JSA ongoing seems like it's going to be tackling, which is cool. But you've obviously got Helena Wayne as a prominent character kind of in the later part of the timeline. You've got the classic JSA in the 40s. You've got these new legacy characters in the future, some of them very far in the future. I think it was the year 3000 something. So you've got all of this going on, and the book's jumping around, and it does flow quite well. Like, it reads quite well when you're reading it. It's just hard to talk about it when it's jumping around all this time so much. So yes, so that's the broad strokes of it. So I mean, looking at some of these scenes here, you got Helena Wayne at the start. You know, she makes a snow angel and it looks like a bat, and then the other kid says a cat. Yeah. So very, very smart. And what we get her later is that, like, Selena is mad because Helena thinks there's an intruder in the house, and it's actually just Batman coming home, and she ends up stabbing Batman, and this is how she learns that her father's Batman, and he shows her the Batcave. But this pisses off Selena because she's like, no, you promised our kid would never be a Robin, that she would never put on a cape, and this is now she knows it's going to happen. It's going to lead to that, and we see all the Robin costumes of the past.
The Hall of Fallen Robins.
And it sounds like they've all died for the way that they talk about this.
which wouldn't surprise me if this is all Earth 2 stuff because of the JSA, right? And that I had remember reading the Robinson version back in the day, and this was the, you know, Helena becoming Huntress because Selena forbid it, you know. So she's like, well, I'm not Batwoman. I'm not, you know, the new Bat. I'm my own thing. And I forget how Batman had died there for her to do it. But yeah, I just seen that Hall of Robins really cracked me up. And like, yeah, no, Selena's right. Keep your kid out of a red and yellow costume, please.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's pretty good stuff. The general idea that to switch over to Dr. Fate stuff is that at one point we get the present day stuff with Khalid, who's kind of like learning to be the new Dr. Fate, and he has this vision of the year 3000 Dr. Fate being killed, which we saw earlier in the book, and he misinterprets it and says, I think I saw myself die, and he didn't. He saw another Dr. Fate die. I mean, he should still be scared because this guy's still coming for him, but it's interesting to sort of like point, like, notice his mistake and sort of understand it as the audience. I think that's quite smart. Because it makes us feel like we're like, it's an understandable thing that he gets wrong, but we kind of like get a bit of insight to it, which is kind of cool.
Well, yeah, because he doesn't know it's 1,000 years in the future.
Yeah. He just sees.
He's just seeing the death of a fate, or the death of fate. Maybe that's another thing here in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. Yeah, so it seems like the story in the 40s, we're going to see how these original missing characters, or at least some of them, how they fit into the story, because one of them is the Red Lantern, who's the Soviet, like, Golden Age villain.
I love that. That's what you can always count on the Golden Age, is that there's always going to be a Soviet counterpart to our,
what I like about it is that obviously, like, Golden Age Green Lantern's very separate from Green Lantern Corps and all these other Green Lantern concepts. I like the idea that there's a Red Lantern for back then, but it's got nothing to do with a Red Lantern Corps or Atrocitus or anything like that. This is the Soviet Lantern.
He's red, He's red because he's a Soviet.
Yes.
It's like Rocket Red. And he looks just like in the backup section. He looks a lot like his costume looks a lot like Alan's.
Oh yeah,
in that type of way.
In fact, that's the couple of pages where it's like the guy's looking at the news, but it's like Alan is talking to someone and they're looking at the newspaper, and it's bringing this up. It's at the end of that scene where you see the mysterious villain who's kind of watching. He like steps on like a time pad or something and seems to go into the a little bit further ahead where he's in the 50s, and the JSA are at this hearing because they're the government are trying to get them to unmask for reasons.
Which is the people versus the Justice Society, which is like a famous story.
Oh,
so
now you mentioned that, you're right. But there's a moment later on. Is this where Dr. Fate in the 70s is getting checked because he's had another like vision like he did in the 40s? There's like a casual reference to something that happened earlier that week, and there's an editor's note saying, in so and so issue. Like, I was like, okay, Johns, you're just flexing. You're just flexing that you can reference this event from a comic issue from the 1970s.
And you know what? When I used to read back in the day before we had the internet, I appreciated him bringing that knowledge, because then I would know I could check out All-Star Comics 61 to see a building fall on top of Dr. Fate. Joe,
what's so funny about these missing 13 characters is that I think they had to point out that these were new characters, because the way Johns pulls from DC history, I could have totally believed that they were all real, and I just didn't know who they were.
I'm not going to be surprised if some of them do have real counterparts.
Oh, sure, yeah.
That for whatever reason, they're just doing this version of them. But someone like the Mr. Terrific sidekick, I fully would have believed that was a character from back in the day. It's kind of like the Sentry that way, where for the longest time, I believe they really found these old Marvel documents of a lost hero from the 60s, and all to come out that was all a hoax meant to sell comics, But here, I mean, it shows what his knowledge of the DC universe is like, that he could make them feel like, they are from that era.
Yeah, and we see Dr. Fate about 13 years ago from now, him running into Catwoman and having another one of his visions, which we actually get a name for the villain here. It's not a name, but like something to call him. He calls him the Stranger, so I guess that's what we'll call him now, rather than the Ginger Menace. Even though I think Ginger Menace has a ring to it.
I think so too.
Yeah, but the Ginger Stranger. But he says to Catwoman, "Oh, like I saw the Stranger's going to kill your daughter," and she's like, "I'm not going to have a daughter. I'm Catwoman,
I'm not one for kids."
Yeah. Which I actually loved that after that page, when you turn the page, you go straight to Helena in the Batcave, which is a nice kind of transition and an omen.
Yeah. With also the snow globe, which reminded me of Flashpoint Beyond.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah. So snow globe's there. So.
And it's the very next page you see Corky from who was in Flashpoint Beyond a lot at the ends of the books,
talking to John Wilkes Booth, telling him that he's going to assassinate a president one day. Which that's super bold. You don't want to do that.
Well, obviously he's trying to talk him out of doing it, but it sounds like he's convinced him to do it, because the guy's like, "Oh, everyone will know my name."
Yep.
Oh, that sounds great. It's almost like he's inadvertently caused it.
Yep.
So good fun stuff. But yeah, there's some little teases here that they're kind of disconnected from everything else. It's right after they're arguing in the time bubble, but you see Mime and Marionette from Doomsday Clock, and it looks like someone's looking for their kid, right? Maybe it's a stranger who's looking for their kid. Right. And then the sort of the girl who's replaced Ozymandias, and then we see the Dr. Manhattan symbol on, I presume, Sally's head, or possibly their kid's head.
Yeah, I'm not sure, because it's someone that has a lot of hair.
Yeah.
So it's not the baby.
It's a lot of teases. There's a lot of teases here.
I didn't realize this until just now, but Mime is painting without a roller. So it's, again, good on the art for pulling that together.
That's such a subtle thing. You could easily miss that. You could easily miss that.
But yeah, you look and he's, Marionette's painting the nursery. Yeah. He has his hands empty, but he's holding something, which, And
obviously this is the Gary Frank page.
Yep.
Surprising no one. Yeah. And
which I'm glad they're choosing to pay off some elements of Doomsday Clock, even though I would also be fine with them never touching it again. You know,
I think they get away with it here because the Time Masters are going through and fixing the timeline. It does. It's just almost like it doesn't matter because ultimately it's going to be fixed into the timeline anyway. And another big thing in the future, of course, is that Batman is killed, and the police come to tell Selina. And we have some old age versions of some of the JSA, to comfort her, which is the final page, and Helena's like, someone murdered my father, and I'm going to find him. I'm going to throw him off a goddamn building because I'm the goddamn huntress. So there's like to be continued in JSA issue 1, which is, I mean, I was excited for a John's ongoing. I'm definitely excited after this because this was such a tantalizing tease of like a lot of different stuff that he's playing with. I know Connor was a bit down in the idea of like it being John's again, and I get why he said that, but this feels like he's doing JSA in the style that he did Doomsday Clock, which I think is intriguing to me. Yeah,
I feel like John's shifting ever so slightly from, hey, this is the secret history of the DCU, right? Where he's pulling stuff from actual continuity, from stuff like, Alan Moore had done Green Lantern Corps, or stuff from The Flash from back in the day. This feels more like, yes, this is the secret history in quotes of the JSA, but it's all new stuff.
Yeah.
They're not these big retcons because it feels just like they're going to massage the time stream back, and he's just going to be able to tell this almost self-contained story. And I'm excited for that because it's been a while since, we all love Doomsday Clock, right? And it's felt like that was forever ago. So I'm here for more of this type of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is not to say that I feel as strongly on this as I did issue 1 of Doomsday Clock, but I definitely was getting some of those vibes from some of the things that it was doing. And certainly this jumping around the timeline, and it's not quite doing Dr. Manhattan, even though there's a reference to Dr. Manhattan in it, but it does kind of have a similar feel, the way you're jumping around back and forth and building some of the narrative out of things. So but yeah, we come out of this with obviously Huntress wanting to avenge her father. We come out of this with the missing 13, and we come out of this with the Stranger going back through time, killing the JSA. And I'm sure they're all connected in the end, but those seem like the 3 separate plots that we're kind of following get into issue 1 of JSA, which is cool. And that's starting next month. What I say?
Yeah.
Oh no, it's this month. It's November.
Is it November? I thought it's December.
Oh, I think it might be this month.
All right, I'm gonna peruse.
Because the Stargirl book's next week.
Yeah, Stargirl is next week, and then let's see, the 23rd. Nope. Scrolling.
Maybe it's December. I don't know.
Let's see. Oh, it is. It's the 5th week, so that's why. It's on the 30th with a bunch of other annuals. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So cool. Obviously, it's the art throughout is very, very good. There's a lot of good artists in this book. It's weird to judge overall because it is jumping around so much. It feels relatively justified as it does it because it's jumping into different timelines, different parts of the continuity with very different characters. Having Frank on the Doomsday Clock reference page makes a lot of sense. So it's a really hard book to judge art-wise because of that. But I can't remember very many pages that I didn't like. Like most pages had someone of quality doing the art,
Yeah.
So it's tough to say. There's a lot of nice pages in here. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, and I like how each of the different times are distinct too. Like you're not, you're in a different setting from just the way the art shifts.
Yeah, because you only get the caption within the year the first time you go to that time period. Yep. When it goes back to some of them a second time or a third time even, it doesn't give you the caption again. So you just get it from the context and the art from, this is continuing the young Helena story in 13 years' time. This is continuing, the present day stuff or whatever it is. You get it from the art, which is good. So I will say this though, I did feel the upgrade in writing from going from like John's with probably doing the story but 2 other writers scripting it from Flashpoint Beyond to this, which is just John's doing it all, and it felt stronger because of that.
Yeah. Well, it makes me wonder if because of all the Time Master stuff, if he actually did write that. because the Time Master's voice seemed to match from Flashpoint Beyond. You know,
Oh, yeah.
so you know, not to take away from the other two, from Sheridan and Adams. You know, maybe they're just really good at that too, but that seemed to be consistent across the way. So, but yeah, no, I'm excited for this. This is exactly my type of jam when it comes to comics. This is why I got into comics originally. It's because of John's. I started reading on basically a weekly basis. So yeah.
Yeah. So just to briefly touch on this before we rate the book, there is some secret file style pages at the back of the missing 13 characters. So there's an Aquaman who it says full name unknown, brief alias as Adam Waterman.
Very golden age.
Yes.
Very golden age.
Definitely.
Also in the art, there is him throwing what looks like a polar bear at hunters, and that cracks me up.
I see that, yes. Very good. Also, I'm not sure if he comes from Atlantis, or I mean, there's a history here that I could read, but I haven't read it. But there's in the art, there's like a scientist, and like then this Aquaman's like strapped to a chair, almost as if this is how he got his powers. So I don't know if that's true. People who have read all of this could tell me. Next up, we got Betsy Ross and Molly Pitcher, who are baseball themed too.
American history themed.
Okay.
Betsy Ross sewed, legend has it, sewed the first flag of the United States, and then Molly Pitcher was a woman that was bringing out water that ended up manning a cannon during the Revolutionary War. So these two, I did read this one. These two were sidekicks to Miss America, who seems like a lost character in and of herself. But yeah, they had both gotten not magic, but legendary artifacts from the Revolutionary War that gives them powers. And it says they vanished the day after World War II ended.
Interesting. Then we got Cherry Bomb.
Who's a human bomb sidekick from the Freedom Fighters.
Got kind of like a bomb disposal like safety suit is effectively her costume. So yeah, okay. And then we got the Harley Quinn son.
Who's as I was reading earlier, is Alan Scott Green Lantern had a villain named Harley Quinn. This is apparently her son. And he fought Infinity Inc., which is Jade and Obsidian's team of that legacy characters of the Justice Society. So yeah.
Then we got John Henry Jr., obviously Steele's son, which is easy to get from context, but he has a very different outfit. He's got like just like a black hood, but then he's just got like dungarees on, and he's holding the hammer.
Yeah, he looks like Hooded Justice too from The Watchmen, which I think is interesting considering this ties into Doomsday Clock. But also, it says here his first appearance was in the New Frontier 6, which was the what's his name? Darwin Cook, which is his take on all the Silver Age stuff. So interesting here. But yeah, so we'll see how where he plays in to here, because it's seeming like Ordway is doing half of them and then Nock is doing the other.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if some are going to show up in Stargirl and some are going to show up in Justice Society.
Very possible. Then we got the Boom, which is Judy Garrick. So so this is the daughter of Jane Joan, which traditionally they didn't have kids. Right?
They couldn't have kids, which is why they were raising Bart as their own, basically.
And it is teased in this issue, actually, because back in the start when the JSA are having their photograph taken, they're getting Fate to kind of like tell some of their futures, and Garrick asks, "Oh, how many kids are me and Joan going to have?" And they get interrupted because Fate has his vision at the end, but it's kind of like teasing that there was about to be an answer. So that was a tease for that. Then we got Ladybug.
Who seems like it comes from a different Earth, right? Let's see. Maybe not. I thought I had read that because I had skimmed this one because I was like, oh, who's she? But yeah, no, it doesn't seem like it. So yeah, this is another knock one. So I'm wondering if a lot of these younger heroes are going to show up with Stargirl.
Yeah, so it seems like she's connected to Red Bee.
Yep.
Then we got Legionnaire, who's blacked out, and everything's all blacked out as if it's redacted, so you can't read anything.
But also red. So I'm wondering if this is the Stranger.
Oh yeah, this could be the Stranger. Yeah, and it does seem like he has time travel tech and.
Yep. The Legion ring.
I would say that the hair looks like the right length based on this blacked out photo. Then we got a Mr. Miracle. This is Thaddeus Brown. Yep.
Who was Shiloh Norman, the other Mr. Miracle. That was his mentor. He also mentored Scott Free when Scott Free came to Earth. So I do like that Johns is going through and making Thaddeus Brown the first Mr. Miracle. Or the Golden Age Mr. Miracle, if you will.
Yeah, that's neat. Then we got Quiz Kid.
And this is the one that I would have believed just existed, but this is Mr. Terrific's sidekick. So, Smartest Boy in the World by Mr. Terrific.
Interesting. Then we got Salem the Witch Girl, who I think was referenced in this issue as well. Someone talked about a girl and thinking her name was Salem. Or thinking she's from Salem, which I think was them messing up.
Seems like a counterpart to Clarion the Witch Boy. But yeah.
Is that a big truck outside your house?
Yeah, it's garbage day.
Yeah.
So
it's garbage day!
It is.
Yeah. There you go. And then Red Lantern, I think, rounds them out. Yep, he does. Yeah. Which obviously you mentioned is the Soviet equivalent of Green Lantern. Yeah. Very similar outfit, though. But he's got a beard.
He's got a beard, and his cape is red with what looks like a black tunic. So, yeah. Just very much what I would expect from a Golden Age Red Lantern character.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah.
It was fun looking through all these, even if I didn't bother reading all the history descriptions. It was just nice to like get a sense of them all and look at them all, because they're going to be a big deal going forward by the sounds of it in the main story. So, curious to see how that shapes up. All right, Matt, what are you giving the Golden Age issue 1?
I'm going to give this an 8.
Yeah, I think I'm inclined to agree with that. And I think I'm intrigued by what it's setting up. It's nice to have a Geoff Johns comic again. It's a very obviously mixed bag of art, but the art's generally quite good. So, but it's not a complete knockout the park either.
No.
You know, so I think 8 out of 10 is quite fair. Okay. All right, Batman versus Robin, issue 3. Mark Waid, writing with Mahmud Hazar and Mahmud Hazar. I always add in the extra syllable, and Scott Godlewski on art. So this continues, you know, the journey between the two characters. The Batman's with Alfred, or the demon formerly known as Alfred.
Yeah, that was a bummer.
Oh, come on. The end of the last issue told you this.
Yes, I know, but I thought there might have been a twist upon a twist. And, yeah. Yeah. Also, we got Batman versus the Robins in this issue, which was very...
Damien's basically lined it up so that he goes back down the timeline until he gets to Dick. So he starts off with Tim, then Steph, and Jason... And then ultimately Dick, who's got because they all get like weapons from Neza and Mother Soul, so they all have extra abilities. Tim's got like an invisibility cloak. Yeah,
I'm trying to see because there's a page where he divvies them out to them.
Yeah, it's the first couple of pages. It's not quite far.
Yeah, I'm looking for it. Right. There it is.
Jason gets a trident, which lets him control the water.
A Poseidon. Yeah. Stephanie Brand gets the acoustic of Black Bison, which allows her to kind of control the environment around her. Basically Poison Ivy kind of powers. Yeah, and then Dick gets it's Asrael's sword, the Sword of Sin. So I thought that was all interesting because it's like, well, how's Batman going to deal with these guys? And he does, but yeah. Also, Damian, man, I know he's under the influence of Neza, but man, he's stone cold here. When you get to the stuff with his mom, right?
Oh, sure.
Also,
I mean,
yeah.
he obviously he's got little glimmers coming through that he might be able to fight it and he might be able to get out of it. The pig character from
Shifu Pigsy.
there you go, from Monkey Prince is trying to talk him into snapping it because he's one of the magical characters that's been taken to give Fate more magic power because that's what they've been doing, the villains.
Yep.
So, Batman insists on going alone. Damian's interrogating Talia, but we find out that this comfortable room Talia's in is not real, and she's actually tied upside down, and all of this is just like in her head. Like they're making her think she's comfortable, but she's not really. She's she's in duress, shall we say. But yeah, a lot of the issue is Batman fighting the various Robins one by one, and kind of the Robins sort of voicing their sort of deep resentments towards Batman. So they all come from a place of truth, but obviously they're all heightened because of this control that they've got.
And I love that Bruce is sitting here going like, trying to remind himself that they don't mean any of this. These are just their personal thoughts that they've had when they're in a tough spot. And he, has to remind himself that it's not necessarily what they feel all the time. And I like that little bit of storytelling too. Because Damian wants to put Bruce at his lowest. That's why he's designed it this way.
But the beauty of it is that they all do come from some sort of real place. Like Tim complaining that he was thrown aside as soon as Damian appeared is something a lot of comic book fans would have said around that time. So,
for sure,
it definitely comes from a place of truth, which is interesting. And then, as it goes further, and Steph complaining, oh, you could have trained me properly, you could have raised me to be a proper Robin, but you didn't. And it got her killed.
Well, and then also I like that Bruce rationalizes that, well, now she's a Barbara, and that's Barbara can train her more effectively than he could because of the type of person Steph is. Yeah,
well, the way he phrases it is even just like he never really expected anything from her, but she's actually doing well with Barbara because Barbara's far more patient than he is. So, it's kind of selling Babs a little bit there, which is nice. I mean, Jason is the only one that's not that interesting because Jason being like, blah, 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 you didn't come and save me. You should have came and found me after I came back from the dead. Like, he's been saying this shit for 15 years at this point.
Right. Well, and I love the fact, too, and maybe this is commentary from Waid, too, that Stephanie was meant to be the obstacle, so to soften him up for Jason, right?
Yeah.
Because that Bruce is going to be able to deal with Jason because Bruce has heard this for the last 15 years, right? So he just doesn't even hesitate and just does a Danhausen gut punch to him, and takes him out like easier than the other ones. Like spoiler had a bigger fight with him than Red Hood did, which I feel is a statement here.
Yeah, but I just like all the others, it feels like these things they're saying, like there's truth in them, but it's not something we've been hearing constantly. Whereas every time Batman and Jason are having a fight or they're bickering with each other, it's the same shit Jason always says. You
let me die. And it's like, sorry. I don't know what else to say at this point.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. That's not even a critique on Waid. It's just it's the obvious thing that he would say, but unfortunately, everyone writes Jason Todd to say these things. So, but yeah, so it's all building up to Dick, of course. It's obviously not counting with Damian and the pig stuff, but he finally gets to Dick, and I love how Bruce is out of stuff in his belt, so he just takes the belt off and starts using it to defend himself against the flaming sword. It's one of my. I kind of like it because it's like obviously there's a lot of like, oh, Batman like has some secret gadget or he thinks his way out of something. I love that here he's being practical and thinking his way out of something, but he's doing it in a really sort of lo-fi way. This is a very simple MacGyver-y, just no, I need to use the belt to literally try and block the flaming sword, and it's that simple. There's nothing more complex about it.
Well, and I like too that as Dick's like, you put a mask on me to hide who Dick Grayson was, and pulled me into this world, and Bruce has a realization that like, I am a monster. I recruit children to come fight with me. And it gives Dick the ever so slight edge for a hot second.
Yeah. So, fight's decent. But of course, Batman ultimately pulls Alfred in to take the hit, revealing that he's known for ages, long before we probably did, that this wasn't. I mean, I was skeptical. We were all skeptical for obvious reasons.
It's stuff like where he says that he knew because Alfred despises oolong tea. He has no granddaughter, which I believe we brought up. We're like, we'd heard about his daughter, but we hadn't heard about a granddaughter.
Yeah, I think we did bring that up, yeah.
Yeah, there's no Riddler's Labyrinth, So it's these things that he put out there to test, if this really was Alfred. And in a way, it was, right? Is that we find out as Alfred's, fading away, that in order for him to impersonate Alfred, there had to be a little piece of the soul in there.
Yeah,
So,
that leads to the big emotional scene here where the spirit leaves the body and there's actually just a little bit of real Alfred left. So he gets to have this goodbye with Bruce where he says it's not his fault that he died. You can't be everywhere at once. So don't blame yourself for my death. That kind of thing. He's trying to give Bruce this closure before he goes. And he's like, no, you need to save Master Damien. So let this go because it'll only make you weaker if you still blame yourself for this. And he knew what he was getting into. But the final little thing, though, right, is that he says, Bruce says, I miss you. And Alfred's final lines before he fades away is, you'll see me again someday, dear boy. Your parents send their love. And then he's gone. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, Waid. Like,
yep.
Like, you just try to pull in the heartstrings. The idea that Alfred's actually seen the Waynes, and this doesn't feel like. I think because it's the last thing he says. Like, see if he'd said this up front and Bruce got to ask questions, it would be kind of cheesy and it would feel cheap and annoying. Because it's the very final thing he says, so there's no chance to elaborate on it, and it's just like a little. Oh no, he's spoken to the Waynes. He's actually seen them, and whatever's beyond death, he's seen them.
Well, and not just that too, as Bruce actually gets to say goodbye to Alfred, where we didn't get that in that story, where Bane squishes his head because of Damien, because Bruce wasn't there. So here it does feel like Bruce finally gets closure with the whole Alfred situation, and it doesn't feel cheap that they brought Alfred back, right? Because it is just a possession type deal, But we get this really strong emotional moment here where Alfred gets to, be his, his surrogate father again and be like, hey man, don't worry about me. You did good.
But he also gets something from Alfred here that he can never have from his parents, which is Alfred gets to tell him this wasn't your fault. Because Bruce always in some level, even though he was a kid, kind of blamed himself for his parents' death. So there's like this thing where Alfred's kind of become like his parents now, and that he's another fallen person in his life that he would want to avenge or motivate himself to be an even better Batman. But unlike his parents, the thing that separates them is that aside from he got to spend a lot more time with them, is that he gets to actually say here, no, you'll be stronger if you let this go and don't blame yourself for me. I don't know, I think it's an interesting counterpoint to his actual parents and makes Alfred's death feel a little bit different. This definitely makes his death feel like a much bigger deal than that actual arc in King's Run did make it feel. That was one of the big complaints we had at the time, is we didn't even believe it happened at first, because it was just kind of like, they're going to retcon this in like 2 issues, because it felt too out of nowhere. Yep. Kind of thing. So
for sure.
No, it's a really touching scene. It's really good. And then, it's Batman, bandages his arm up a little bit and goes off walking into the darkness to fight the big fight. So it's a great cliffhanger. This was have all these issues been like extra long? Because this was like 40 pages.
Yeah.
They've all been okay. I didn't realize that.
I think so, because it just because the last one was the one where they were in the House of Secrets and the House of Mystery, right?
Yeah.
And that felt long too. There was a lot of twisting and turning through that one.
I mean, that's read quite quick. I'm not even complaining. I'm just it felt like this this big thing where it was going from Robin to Robin, building up, hinting that Damien might still be in there and fighting back and like fighting against Nez's control. All really interesting. Which the other big thing we have to mention actually is like Nez is actually preparing because his son is even worse and he wants to kill his son.
Yeah, because he tells him, he wants to know where he is, right? Because he says he's gearing up to play offense. He's playing defense. And then Neza's like,
this is the pig who's saying this.
Pigsy's saying all this. And he says, where is he? You alone would know, tell me. And then he says, he's already here on Earth. Your son has finally arrived, and he can't wait to say hello, right? And so we go through, and we get Bruce fighting, and then we get Damian talking to Pigsy. And, he remembers him from the Monkey Prince stuff. And he asks him, what does he get all of this? And this is where he tells him that Neza's going to use Earth's magic to enslave this planet. He wants an army of 8 billion strong. You know why? Did he ever tell you to use against a more powerful demon named King Firebull? His son, he goes, effectively. How does this mother soul figure in, right? So I didn't realize it was going to tie into Monkey Prince that quickly with Pigsy, and of course we know that Monkey Prince. I feel like we didn't think that the Monkey King had teamed up back in World's Finest with the other heroes that had locked up Neza. But here, right. So here Waid's with that. So I did get caught up with Monkey Prince, and he's on his way to fulfilling his destiny. It's very, very much like that way that Con Keenan was unlocking all of his stuff, in New Superman. So I'm curious to see where this goes here, because it says in Monkey Prince 9, we'll see how Saifu Pigsy gets abducted.
So are we thinking this Sun King Bull, whatever his name is?
King Firebull.
King Firebull, there you go. Yeah. Are we thinking he's like maybe the big bad then for this crossover event that Waid's spearheading?
Maybe not. I still think it's Neza, because I feel like something happens by him putting all of the magic into the helm of Mahmud.
Maybe, yeah.
And that's what causes all of these Lazarus events.
I just because I'm remembering that this 1 month or 2 month event is spinning out of issue 4 of this, which is the next issue. So it just kind of feels like they've dropped this on us, and I'm like, okay, so clearly the next issue is going to set that up.
Yeah.
But
so I feel like the whole Lazarus volcano stuff is going to happen because of this guy, but maybe it's not. He's not what they're fighting.
Okay.
But yeah, who knows?
I mean the Bill Sun thing. He might be. Yeah. He might just be like the next arc of this book. He might be, so which is fine. He
might fall into that. But yeah, just the idea that Waid's taking the Monkey Prince stuff, and that side of the DCU and putting into here, tying it in with the All Ghouls and the Demon's Head and Mother Soul and all that stuff. I love that type of interconnectivity. And like, again, you don't need to read Monkey Prince for any of this to make sense, because I caught up before this week. But it was nice when I got to Pigsy here, and he sounds just like he has in Ying's writing. So just Waid has a handle on the DCU, but yeah, he's making these characters feel like they're very established.
There's Waid's doing a lot of stuff with the recent continuity in this book. Although I did roll my eyes a little bit at the editor's note that they brought up how Raz died and how Raz wanted to repent. It's when Damien's talking to Talia and whatnot. And it says, check it out in the now classic Batman Shadow War. I meant now classic. That's a bit presumptuous on your part.
It was readable and it was fun, but I would never call it a classic story.
I did enjoy it. I reasonably did enjoy that book. I especially liked the first couple of issues, which was Raz wanting to repent and then the assassination. Like I was really into that part of it. But calling it a now classic when it's less than a year old feels a bit of a.
That is presumptuous.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, well, not feeling that so much.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, the art here, I really couldn't tell Godlewski from Asrar, which is good.
Yeah.
I feel like you could always tell Godlewski's art when he was doing Superman. It does stick out. However, here it blends very well with Asrar's style. So I wish I could tell you which pages were which, but I really can't. So
yeah, I'm not actually sure myself, which perhaps says that neither one of them are super distinct. Maybe they're both a little house style, which is good for the sake of them being paired together, which is convenient here.
If I had to guess, I'd say the Godlewski stuff was the Damian and Pigsy, because it is the shadows and the shading.
Oh, it's a lot more flatter actually. Yeah, I would definitely say that's the other artist. Yeah.
So, but all of the Batman versus the Robin stuff is I'm pretty certain is Asrar. So But yeah, no, the art tandem works out really well, and this was a really fun issue. Like, I'm really enjoying this book still, and I'm happy that Mark Waid is back at DC to tell this type of story, because I understand that like continuity like this isn't for everyone, but it's very much for me. And I feel like I'm getting more out of reading. You know, it helps that I'm doing a podcast and I can justify reading all the books, but when they
Sure.
start to interplay with each other, it makes me feel like I've unlocked something. And yeah, so
Yeah, I just like that the book's called Batman versus Robin, so technically everything that happens in this book is just another example of Batman versus Robin.
Yeah,
because it's Batman versus all the Robins.
Yeah,
so very good. And plus anything that gives my girl Steph a bit more page time is fine by me. So yeah, no, it's a solid issue of the book. It's kind of weird because it's like, I wouldn't say it's hitting like spectacular highs, but it's hitting a very strong, enjoyable level where I'm into the continuity of it, and I'm into, you know, emotional moments with the Alfred goodbye is very good. It felt very motivating for Batman going in to the cave after that. So yeah, I had a good time. What are you rating Batman vs. Robin issue 3?
I'm gonna give this an 8.5.
I'm going to go straight 8. Liked it quite a bit, but I'm not going to go any higher than that.
Gotcha.
All right. Superman, Son of Kal-El, issue 17. Tom Taylor writing, Cian Tormey on the art. So, it's almost Matt's bedtime, apparently. I better.
Yeah, sorry. It's been a rough couple days. So, you know.
I mean, I've yawned a couple times, but I'm used to like hiding it behind the mic so no one can see.
I'm not. So.
just to keep up the appearance.
Yes.
So yeah, this is obviously Cal's back on Earth. John and him are, you know, they're racing to another planet. It's a fun little sequence at the start. The main gist of this one, though, is that John feels that he needs to talk to his dad about being bisexual, about the fact that he has a boyfriend, and feels nervous about doing it, even though his dad's Superman, literally the most understanding man on the planet. Yeah, which is obviously kind of like a little bit. That's a little funny to the reader, I think. But obviously,
yeah, not just that, but it is a, you know, this father-son type of story to where, at the end of the day, John is still looking for acceptance from his dad, even though Clark's never done anything for John to feel doubt about it. But it's still just one of those things that John's nervous about, and he can't, you know, and he just can't help it. And it's a very human emotion coming out of a, you know. I
mean, I think that's a very realistic thing. I mean, I think what it gets into here, because I think even if someone's never given you a reason to doubt how they're going to react to something, I think it's very human just to like worry about, but what if I'm surprised and it's the worst possible reaction? And I think that's something I think I felt about just weird random things. I think if you're someone who is, you know, gay or bisexual or you know, whatever on that spectrum, I feel like that there's so much like, and I think it's something that Superman actually says when they finally have the conversation after John's in the hospital because of the, you know, the red sin stuff. I think he says it sucks that the world has made you question that I might not be okay with this. And it's kind of the society thing where, you know, there's such a big deal made about coming out and about the reactions to coming out. And not because it's fabricated, because there is a lot of people who react badly to it, right? It's very well documented. And I think that's been something that, you know, saddens Superman is a really poignant beat in this book. I think this issue is very focused, and it's very focused in a way that I really like, in that not only does it all revolve around John eventually having this conversation with Clark, but you have Clark and John having this scene where John can't speak to him about it, and then you have a scene with Clark and Pa Kent with him sort of getting fatherly advice from his dad, the dad of comics, effectively, and Pa Kent, about how to approach this and how he feels bad about how John doesn't want to speak to him about it. And, you know, Pa Kent obviously gives him some good advice. So the fact that we're getting Pa Kent advice to Clark, and then we get, you know, Clark being a good dad to, you know, there's a nice generational like, you know, trickle down that's happening in this issue. Which
and it kind of reinforces that the reason that Clark's the way he is because he was raised by the Kents. Yeah. You know? And I just like that he's questioning it, and he goes, how could John possibly believe I'd want anything other than his happiness? And Pa looks at him and goes, how? Because some fathers don't. Or they do care and they're just too worried about how it reflects on them or some other cowardly nonsense. And it's again, like you said, he's Comics Dads or DC Comics Dad, and he's explaining to the most powerful man, right? These strong emotional things. And I love that relationship. I'm glad that Pa Kent's back for Clark to have a conversation like this with him.
Yeah. It's really good stuff. I mean, the Red Sin thing, it's not weak. It's perfectly fine, and obviously it has to be there to set up why, we get this conversation with John in the hospital. Like, I think it's just fine. We're building up to what this plot's going to be in the next issue. But it's the part of the issue that feels the most like, oh, it's just there because we have to have this action sequence to set up this next thing, because the main part of the issue is the three conversations. It's the first conversation with Superman and John, the second conversation with Pa Kent, and then the third one in the hospital. In the hospital,
yeah. And the Red Sin stuff, I feel like this is where it's kind of tying into Metallo, because I feel like this is Red Sun version of that, where Metallo has the kryptonite heart, but Red Sin has this Red Sun energy that can hit the Kryptonians and take their powers for a hot second. And
we know the Red Suns do that, so this is just setting that up. And his name's Red Sin, though, Matt. Just to make
no, I know, but I feel like yes.
But you called him Red Sun there like twice, so I'm just making it clear.
I was meaning the Red Sun energy,
yes.
Not with, but here he's using that to make him vulnerable, which I do think that's again Taylor playing with the, John is vulnerable at the hospital.
I get those like subtext of it, right? The idea that he calls for his dad and his dad has to come save him, like it literally catches him as he's falling out the window. He does feel vulnerable, like, and that's the point. He's making it literal, which is good writing. Like all that's good. The only thing I'm really saying is that all of the strengths of this issue are in the one-on-one conversations, and then the action scene's fine and it's there to set up, but it's there to set up, and it's well done enough. But it's the heart to heart after it that works, and it's one of the best issues of the run because it is just this kind of heartfelt conversation between them. So good. And then the ending sets up that Lex is in some way kind of behind or not even behind Red Sin, but he's plotting, and we know he's plotting because we know he's doing stuff with Metallo over in Action Comics. So Project Blackout is what he says to whoever he's
part
working
of
on
Project. It looks like it was one of the people that Bendix was using. One of those type. So, but yeah, him taking the saw out at the end, very, very terrifying. Because who knows what he's doing to this dude.
Building a supervillain, no doubt.
Of course.
It's it's Lex doing his thing and just sort of complaining that they'll soon see John and Clark Kent for what they really are. They're not human beings. They don't deserve empathy. So which is a really interesting page to get after this very heartwarming issue, which is all about the father and son bond between them and how human they actually are. So it's to cut to Lex at the end being like, they're not humans, they don't deserve empathy, which almost feels like a caricature of someone who is homophobic and like they're not people. No.
And I feel like Lex is also the person like, I don't care what you are, but why are you in my face about it? And John's just like, I'm just trying to exist. It feels very much of that same stuff. I also love when we get Dr. Midnight taking care of John, which I like, which is the second Dr. Midnight. So we're already getting some of those JSA ties. But where he tells Clark tells John that Nightwing's investigating, he goes, oh, okay then. And he goes to rest. And then Dr. Midnight's telling someone, hey, you can't come in here. John's like, yeah, that's not going to work. And I'm drawing a blank.
Jay,
there you go. Jay runs through Dr. Midnight, and it's a very nice moment of, you're unstoppable. I'm untouchable. We're not supposed to have these type of interactions. I just love that whole, sentiment there. So
yeah, it's a very sweet issue. I mean, the art from Tormey is, it's been consistent with what it's been, which for me is good, but it's a little bit clean at times for my taste. Sometimes it feels a little too glossy in places and flat, but certainly not bad and certainly consistent with what it's been. And it does nail some of the expressions on their faces in the key moments, which is good. And it's probably the thing this issue needed the most, more than anything else. So yeah, sweet issue. What are you giving it, Matt?
I'm gonna give this an 8.
I'm gonna go. I'll go a little nudge. I'll say 8.5. I think the heart of this one really works. So yeah, I think I'll go with 8.5. All right, cool. Batgirls issue 12, which is Becky, Cloonan, and Michael Conrad writing with Neil Googe on the art. So yeah, so the end of the last issue made it look like Riddler was the serial killer.
Okay.
The Hell Ripper that we had tormenting the part of the city. And very quickly in this issue, it's like, no, he's not the killer. He was just tracking the killer. And all those clues that were on the crime scenes, that's because Riddler had already been investigating the crime scenes and was leaving his own clues for whoever to follow, which turned out to be the Batgirls. So the actual killer is not like a big character or anything like that. He's just like this guy, basically, who had issues, and Riddler got interested enough that he wanted to track him. And this killer was like so proud that he hadn't left any clues that part of the reason why he's going after the true crime podcaster in this issue is because she's been spreading these clues that have been left. He's like, no, I left no clues. Like, my work's immaculate. I when I kill people, I leave no evidence. So yeah, so Batgirl and Cass, Steph and Cass are fighting Riddler, and Killer Moth's there. He wants to beat up Riddler for double crossing him. So Cass puts on Killer Moth's wings and like flies away with them, and like Steph's like, oh man, she's so cool, because they split up because Steph has to keep an eye on Riddler. And I suppose the big thing going forward is that Riddler teases that he's sort of like doing these riddles as you do, and he's fighting Steph, and he starts dropping hints of fathers and like people who are good at riddles, and ultimately hints that Steph's father's not dead, which is what Steph believed. So it seems like we're going to be getting a Steph's dad plot coming up in the coming pages, which is cool. I'm all for them doing some personal stories for each of the different Batgirls in this. What showed me about this issue actually is there's not a lot of Babs, and I'm not complaining. I actually think it would be kind of cool for the issues to sometimes focus on one or two of the three over the others. Babs like calls the cop that they were working with before, and he goes and makes the arrest of the killer. But other than that, it's all Steph and Cass. Like, you've got Steph and Cass fighting Riddler. Steph's left alone with Riddler, and that does the personal stuff where they tease the future plots. And then Cass, of course, is flying with Killer Moth, and then ultimately swoops in to save the day when the killer comes after the reporter. And what's actually really cool about this is that the reporter like gets her eye stabbed or sliced with a blade, and it's literally like a panel where she's got blood just coming out of her eye, and it's actually kind of grotesque for such a teen-friendly comic book. I will say the art is it's Neil Googe again, who's been doing a couple of the issues recently. It does feel like it's maybe a little rushed in places. Like, there's some pages where it feels like, oh shit, we have to get this out. I have to just kind of, it's a little bit more sketchy in places, a little bit less detailed. Feels like it's just a little simpler than it has been, and that's issues that Googe also did. So I wonder if this was a little bit of a time crunch to get this one done. Which is not to say that it's not good, or it still doesn't fit the tone that Batgirl should have, because it does for the most part. So I can't really be too critical. But it definitely feels like, if the art before was like a consistent, 7 or 7.5, it's maybe down to like a 6.5 or something like that here. Not that we individually rate the art per se, but it's, just a little bit less. It just feels like there's a bit of detail missing in some of the pages. Riddler ends up diving out the window when the robot dog bites him, and Steph loses him. But it was a really great scene though when Cass swoops in and fights the killer. And saves the true crime podcaster, who immediately is complaining she didn't get any of this like hostage situation on tape to play out to her audience. But we get a fight scene between Cass and the killer, and this killer is like a trained guy who's good at what he does. He's ex, military or CIA or something like that. And Cass, like, we get almost a classic Cassandra Cain Batgirl fight where, and this is by far the best the third person narration in this book has ever been, because this reminded me of old Cass stories where she would be fighting someone and it would all be like, it's all these 9-panel grids, it's all these motion lines of them swiping each other and blocking and stuff. But the narration is kind of getting into Cassie's head and talking about how, her adversary is different. It's like fighting an alien. He's unnerving and unlocks the door inside her. She remembers her training, her brutal upbringing, and she needs to close that door. And it's this really. It's a very effective Cassandra Cain style fight scene that made me think. Basically, what I feel like is that this issue successfully had Steph and Cass together and then split them up and gave me a very good Steph scene with Riddler and then gave me a very good Cass fight scene with the killer in a very traditional Cassandra Cain way, which was... She does talk a little bit, don't get me wrong, there's a little bit of dialogue during the fight scene, but it's mostly just the action, and then the narration kind of explains the drama in Cassie's head. Because I've not necessarily been a fan of the third-person narration throughout most of this book, but I think this is the best it's ever been because it's actually providing something in the moment as opposed to just being kind of witty. This was more like, no, like, the feelings are going through her and she's remembering her childhood and she's swiping back, and basically it talks about how she has to give the opponent a little bit of hope because then they're easier to beat because they'll let their guard up because they think they're winning. And sure enough, that's what happens. She says nope and then like chops him in the neck. It's probably my favorite panel of the whole book, to be honest.
Nope.
So yes, and as she's ziplining away, she just turns to the podcaster when she asks, is there anything you'd like to say to the people of Gotham, Batgirl? And she says, yes, I gave your podcast 5 stars. And zips away. That gave me a chuckle. By all means, everyone, give Comics From The Multiverse 5 stars on your podcast app of choice.
Yes,
please do. So yeah, it ends with Montoya giving a speech about the officer who went, Calvin, who went and arrested the killer, and saying that the Batgirls are on the side of the police. The podcaster or whatever, she's going to give up drinking because the killer accused her of being an alcoholic. So she's actually, she's maybe grown out of that a little bit, which is nice. There's a little bit at the end where Dick comes over and like basically is told, sorry, Alyssa came over with movies, and Babs is in the wheelchair. Apparently the doctor told her to spend a couple of days without the chip. I'm sure it's only temporary, but it's just it's this idea that maybe sometimes it'll be like that. But yeah, we have Steph and Cass on a rooftop at the end, and basically Steph's like, I thought my father was dead, but maybe he's not, and Cass is like, yeah, but it's okay because we're best friends and we'll deal with it, kind of thing. So it's kind of a sweet ending. There's some white doves flying from the rooftop. No, the arc was good. There's a little epilogue page though that teases that Mad Hatter is going to be involved next arc, and even teases that he's talking about reuniting a father and his daughter. So you would assume that means Steph and Calculator, but not Calculator, sorry, Cluemaster. I always make that mistake. I always think Calculator is Cluemaster.
Right. Well, yes. That's right. I called him Quizmaster in the past. So.
So yeah. I assume that's what... I mean, it could be a red herring, though. Maybe he's talking about someone else, and it's just sort of thematically setting up that we're going down that path. But decent fun. I would probably give this like a 7.5. Probably just the slightly more rushed art, kind of letting it down, because I really liked what it did with Steph and Cass in this issue. Like Cass getting the big hero moment, saving the day. Cool fight scene that felt very Cassandra. And then all the teases about Steph's future, all good stuff. Like this was a solid issue, just maybe let down a little bit by the art, feeling a bit more rushed. So I'll say 7.5 overall. So there you go. WildC.A.T.s, issue 1, Matthew Rosenberg writing with Steven Segovia on the art. AKA, we know nothing about these characters, so let's see what they can do in one issue to make us scared.
Yeah. Well, and we did read the Grifter story in Urban Legends.
Yes,
so we have a little bit of familiarity.
We know Grifter, that's true.
Yeah, and Zealot. So other than that, I feel like if I tried to research any of this, this would drive me insane because there's a lot going on here and a lot that seems familiar. Just from my bare bones knowledge of the Wildcats. So I restrained myself from researching anything.
Sure.
All I know is that Fairchild is a Gen 13 character. And I remember her showing up in the New 52, I want to say in Superboy. And she was a scientist type that, was kind of She-Hulk level where she wouldn't turn into like a Hulk, but she could grow her body to be bigger and have more power. But yeah, other than that, this throws you right into the action. And it almost does feel like you probably should have read that Grifter story. Before reading this.
I think the Grifter story definitely helped me because at least I knew Grifter well enough to kind of have him as a through line. And it starts with this funny bit where he's like, we're getting this story at the start that talks about this alien race that went to war with another alien race and they've been at war forever. But it turns out in the next page that this is just him bullshitting as a bet with Zealot to see if he can convince someone if this story is real. And he does it later on in the issue, but what's funny is later on he's basically describing the plot of Deceased. Which I thought gave me a chuckle. So yeah, it's got a sense of humor, which is nice. I think. Yeah, how'd you go?
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that I don't really know these other characters all that well, and you got Zealot, and you got what was the other guy's name?
Zealot, Deathblow.
Deathblow, that was it. The guy who runs gives them the orders is Marlowe. He's the little guy who is their boss. So I don't really know these characters, but I will say this issue, they need a scientist. They go into this terrorist place, which is the Hive Lab, and because the scientists are supposed to be there to sort of kidnap or recruit or whatever you want to call it, because he tortures a chimp and kills it as part of his experiment, Grifter says, "Oh, F this," and just shoots him in the head. And they're all pissed at him. And then there's a funny punchline where Nightwing and Cassandra Cain jump in and say, "Wait, why are all the terrorists already dead? What's going on?" So, I'll say this. It gave me a sense of character. It did feel very 90s in a lot of ways. Their boss, Marlowe, the way he was kind of yelling at them felt very old school. It felt like the angry police captain yelling at the cops who've caused a lot of damage.
Cole Cash has a lot of rigs in him.
Sure, yeah.
I had to make sure I was remembering who was Riggs and who was Murdoch before I said that. But yeah, he's got a lot of rigs in him, just constantly pissing Marlowe off, and I did appreciate that.
But we also have these other characters who are back at the base. Maxine, who's the comms one, and then we have the character who's in the spacesuit who apparently contacts an entity called the Void that lets them jump around in space and time, or not, maybe not time, but in space anyway. So. I was like, okay, this is making me think of a character from Black Hammer of all things, but so basically, Grifter ends up finding where other scientists are by talking to a guy in a bar. There's a nice little moment where he gets into this fight with these guys who know who he is, and they insult his brother, his dead brother, which I was happy that I knew about this from his story in Urban Legends, because it was some nice context. But there's a moment where he looks over his shoulder, and it's like his brother's standing there and he talks to him, but he's not really there. It's just a little. It was a good little moment, but
it was.
So he basically says to the boss, "Hey, look, I found out where more scientists are." He's like, "Okay, go get one," and it just cuts to them in this shootout, and they're all pissed they had to bring the kid, Fairchild, who ends up saving their ass ultimately. But they're all pissed that they had to bring this kid with them. The action looks pretty. Segovia's art, I'd say, is pretty solid.
For sure.
There's some fun stuff here. There's this interesting gimmick with Fairchild where she'll get big and she'll get bulletproof and she can wreck things for about 30 seconds, but then she'll crash and have a nap. So they end up having to carry her out from there. Yeah,
and then at one point they're like, "Just wake her up and have her punch a hole through the floor." And Christopher's like, "Wait, we can wake her up after this?" So I just like that they're flying by the seat of their pants.
There's a Green Arrow cameo because they're based in Star City, so there's a Green Arrow cameo where they have to try and dodge him. I love that there's no dialogue from Green Arrow, really. It's just he fires some arrows at him, so off in the distance.
And they're like, "We got a Justice League," and they're like, "Which one?" The Robin Hood looking guy. All right, well, he shouldn't be too much of a problem as he fires an arrow through the door. Thought that was pretty fun. But yeah, you can tell Rosenberg really likes this property by, because like I don't know who a lot of these characters are, but I can feel that there's a lot of care taking into them. So like the Void, I do remember something with the Void. It is their teleportation, and it acts through people. So this person that's running it right now, right, might not be the same person.
Yeah.
In a couple issues or whatever, but just the idea of that concept, them using that as the back door or whatever. It also kind of reminded me of Midnighter from what I've read with Midnighter has access to the ghost door and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
kind of reminded me of that too.
I think it's a pretty solid first issue, and despite the fact that there was a lot of characters and a lot of things going on, it felt like a TV pilot where, okay, I don't get all of these characters yet, but I got enough personality that they kind of bounced off each other well enough. And the action scenes were kind of fun that I left this thinking I could probably read some more of this. I could probably enjoy it maybe, depending where it goes. Like the Grifter story in Urban Legends was mostly entertaining. Like the ending was a bit weird because it kind of like pivoted into just showing up more WildCats characters, but this won't have that problem because it's already a WildCats book. So so the ending though is when they go through the floor, they basically fall into a pit of a cult. It looks like they're not Court of Owls, but they're kind of Court of Owls-esque, and they've all got hoods and white masks on.
Yeah, definitely looks like Court Owls,
but it's not a Court of Owls though.
No, but that's what it looks like. So I got a little bit confused for a hot second. Then I remember they're not in Gotham; they're in Star City.
No,
right?
their masks are more like they're almost like bunny or maybe. Yeah, bunny faces maybe. Possibly.
Not quite sure, but yeah, that's where they end up. And
I don't know. But yeah, so they fall down there. I don't quite know how Deathblow works yet, but he kind of like his body gets destroyed in this issue. But I think that means it's okay. It's just expensive to replace him.
Well, and then that's when Marlowe shows up with his bodyguard. It looks like the character Spartan, who I remember from the 90s, who was like an android type character. So I'm wondering if he'll pop in as a member of the team.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
Or maybe as Deathblow's replacement or whatever. They'll put Deathblow in the android or whatever. I'm not too sure. But yeah, they didn't seem to worry when Deathblow got shot like 2 or 3 times.
No, they
just kept on with the mission.
No, they said that's the third body that he's ruined this month, which is a record. Yeah. So it sounds like they just replace his body every time he dies, but it costs money, kind of thing. Which is, interesting. I mean, again, this is the sort of thing. If you're an old school WildCats fan, this is probably all just, known second nature to you. To me, this was all like, okay, what's going on? Who are these different characters? What can they do? Who's your daddy? What does he do? That kind of thing. So, I don't know.
Yeah, so it says here when I just pulled him up that he has accelerated healing factor and psychokinesis. I didn't get that vibe from here. I felt like he was a Deathstroke type, right? Like maybe the healing factor at play. But yeah, but no, he was cool. I liked him a lot. He bounced off of Grifter super well. I like seeing Fairchild because that is the one character outside of Grifter that I'm pretty familiar with at this point. So yeah. But no, it's. I'm glad that Rosenberg was able to parlay, that Grifter story in Urban Legends into a WildCats book, even if it's just a limited series. I'm sure Jim Lee being the publisher now of DC.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that helped.
Was it a hard sell for Rosenberg? So
yeah, is this a 12-issue series?
I believe so.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because it says limited on the cover. So
I'm just trying to remember if it was 6 or 12, but I feel like it was 12. I could be wrong though.
It's paced like it's 12.
Yeah.
Right. Like it. I also love the relationship with Grifter and Zealot, where he's like, yeah, her name is Xana, or because no one that calls her Zealot lives long enough. So that's what I call her.
Zealot's easy to remember though, so that's what I'm going to call her.
Right. So, but no, it's a whole lot of fun and stuff with his brother. But yeah, and you can tell that Rosenberg has an affinity because I just remembered Grifter showing up with Ollie in Vampires. Right, he's at the Blood Farm. So a lot of fun. I'm gonna keep going unless it ends up on a week that's super packed, which I'm guessing, what is this, week 3, week 2?
Week 2
is going to end up. Yeah, if it's going to end up being like this, then I'll be able to keep reading.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
What are you rating WildC.A.T.s?
I'm going to give this a. Let's go 7.5.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'll agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So that'll take us on to The Nice House on the Lake, issue 11.
Mm-hmm.
James Tynion the Fourth with Alvaro, Martinez, Bueno. So there's a character sheet at the back, which would have been, nice in every other issue.
Yeah,
up
right?
till this point. Also, it would have been nice to be at the front. I would have liked to have refreshed my memory before I read the issue, but whatever. But at least it's there. At least it's there. That's all I'll say. So yeah, obviously the last issue ended with that big cliffhanger where the husband character shoots the wife, but the healing's turned off, right? Because Orion's at the helm, and so there's a lot of fallout from that with the crying about that. And then the other thing, of course, is that a lot of their memories were coming back because that had also been switched. And this idea that Walter was getting help from Nora to manipulate everyone, and Nora's now remembering that, and the weird sort of grey areas that's kind of introducing into the plot, and finding out that Nora actually witnessed Walter with his not actually his parents, but the aliens pretending to be his parents.
Yeah, it's very Third Rock from the Sun.
Yeah, but this was years ago. This was way back. This was one of the memories that had been erased. So very creepy visuals, of course, as it has been as we've been going through this stuff.
I didn't realize how Lovecraftian the aliens were until I saw them here. We're assuming they're aliens. Who knows there? Because when Walter turns and looks at Nora right there, and it's just this face of, I'm trying to get to that page, that's coming apart. It's so eerie and creepy.
It's very cosmic horror, yeah.
Yeah. So there it is. I found it. But yeah, they all turn and look at Nora, and there's all these tendrils coming out, and it just, again, it was giving me that cosmic horror type vibe. And then they reform and they're wearing the same type of glasses that Walter does. And again, it makes for this eerie type of visual. And Bueno's art, not that it's messy, but here it's a lot more sketchy. With the lines aren't nearly as clean, and the way that the colors are hitting with the whites and stuff, everything kind of blends into the shadows. And yeah, it makes for some creepy visuals.
Yeah, and this has been talked about by Nora as seemingly, maybe about to burn alive by choice in the future, but talking about how the aliens only saw them as this just another meat bag that's going to die when the world's destroyed and nothing more kind of thing. So it really sets up the tone. But then when we cut back to the main bit of the book, we get the aftermath of the husband holding his wife screaming. It's a really great page, actually. It's one of the best pages in the issue. It's just this fallout, and then everyone else freaking out and can Walter fix this? And I'm thinking he can, and that's kind of what Walter says later, is that, well, no, if the healing's turned on, it'll save her, but if it's turned off and you get killed while it's turned off, then you're gone. There's no rewinding time. There's limits to what the technology,
what even they can do.
So all super interesting. I think it's Reggie who's remembering designing the place, and he even put in little hints to try and trigger his memory because he knew he'd forget. But they didn't work. When the memory was gone, it was truly gone. Right. And only now, because they've all got their memories back, he's remembering it. And him and the other people who knew Walter before high school are teaming up to go in the boat up to the house, the second house. But as this is all going on, basically the husband finds out that, from Walter, that this has happened because someone else is at the controls and turned off the healing. So now the husband's like, who was it? Who did this? As if it's someone else's fault other than Walter's. Because it's not like Ryan knows that they were playing shoot each other.
Right.
When she flipped the switch. Come on now.
But But then we get to the scene that seems to go back in time, right?
Well, it doesn't seem to. It's double because the present day stuff with the wife's just been shot. It's day 48,
right?
And then this scene is day 31. So yeah, we're back earlier on. Yeah,
and this is where it really starts to get like with Walter and Nora, and stuff starts to become more clear. But yeah, Nora's walking through, and then it goes to day 31, and Nora goes to use the sensory deprivation chamber, and then Walter comes to talk to him. And this was so creepy. Bueno's art here with just the shadows and the eyes.
Yeah.
And them formulating this plan. Yeah.
That's this plan. It sounds like there's too many of us ever since they sort of switched things around. So there was the extra person, and because of that, someone has to die. And it almost sounds like they wanted this to happen, where someone was going to get killed, and this is an intentional part of the plan.
Yep.
To let someone have control so that someone gets killed.
But they can't pick who it is because they have to look to Walter's supervisors that this was a completely random act.
Yes.
So they're leaving a lot up to chance and the people in the house.
And this is something that Nora is then obviously forgetting after this, and then remembers in the present day, like everyone else is remembering stuff. So obviously there's a lot of weird mixed feelings for some of these characters when they realize that they've been helping Walter in different ways. And it feels like Nora's the one who's helped him the most, or at least the one that he's confided in the most. So that's super interesting. But yeah, Ryan's freaking out and like, what did I do? What did these different buttons do, kind of thing? And he's explaining, this one controls the people, this one controls the environment, and this one controls the power of who to kill and things like that. And it's all freaking out. But then he drops like a lot of your friends are coming here right now. And so we end in this cliffhanger where they're arriving at the pier and they're walking up the steps. And we just get like the red face of Ryan realizing that they're going to blame her for what's just happened. Because Walter tells her what's happened. Walter tells her that Nara's dead. So like,
and there's no coming back from it. And he says, "Come on now, Ryan. We've been practicing this conversation for a long, long time." Which I like that it goes back to the first issue there, where the payoff to that conversation is, how do you think the world will end? And so I just like that. That's where this end up going.
And there's a couple of hints in the book that the world hasn't ended. Where the characters speculate that maybe it's not true. Like one of the things that Walter said to one of them implied that, this is a test, but the world outside is not actually ended yet.
And that this will determine though if the world will end, which I also is quite ominous. Right, is that maybe all they had to do, it's one of those type where it's like a Twilight Zone episode where all they had to do was just follow the rules, right? And had they followed the rules, the world would be saved. But the fact that they decided to rebel and think for themselves and think they could outthink all of this, it's doomed everyone else. And I don't know if that's where this is going, but those are the vibes I was getting as Walter's telling this to
It's a really
Ryan.
Interesting flip if Walter effectively this entire time has been trying to save the planet by proving that people can be good, by putting these 12 people or however many together to show his superiors, this alien race or whatever they are, look, they can be good. But this group are actually just going to F it up and get everyone killed is quite fascinating.
Right. And so he tells her too, right before that, that these are the controls that let you kill me. Which I don't quite believe, right? But maybe that's part of the test. Maybe that's what causes everything to go on fire there at the end. But yeah, it's pretty effective penultimate, chapter.
It's a big cliffhanger in it.
Yeah.
I think, there's a moment where Walter's talking to the husband and he says, if you want, I can make you forget everything. Like, either forget that she ever existed or maybe forget that she ever came here. So you might, think there's a chance she's still out there alive in the outside. And it was kind of interesting to hear Walter just talk about it this openly in front of everyone. And kind of made me think for the first time that, on some level, I think he does care about all these people, even if, obviously what he's doing is really manipulative and all the rest of it. But
right. Well, it's almost like almost like a zookeeper talking with the animals, right?
Mhm.
Like, I'm so much further from you, but I still care about you and I don't want you to hurt yourselves. You know, I don't want to see you in pain, type thing. But it does come off as kind of cold when he's just like, I could make you forget.
Yeah. Obviously, that's not what
Yeah.
he's going to want, but
Right.
he is offering that because he thinks it'll make him feel better.
Mm-hmm.
And the art's fantastic in this issue. You talked about the sensory deprivation tank.
Yep.
That stuff looked really great. The big full page spread with the husband holding the wife is fantastic early on. All the color changes. I love the red danger light that they're in the control room when all the other characters are coming at the end. There's a lot of just really nice different art styles, or not art styles, but different color palettes throughout.
Right.
That really sell things. And like you say, that super Lovecraftian like image of of Walter and the quote unquote parents is really good spooky stuff. So fantastic.
Yeah. It's all really good stuff, man. This book still delivers, and again with the art, where it's not as clean, but I feel like that's a stylistic choice. It's because as things are starting to become more chaotic, it's almost like the sense of reality is not falling apart, but it again, not everything's as clean cut as it once was at the beginning.
Yeah.
Right. Things kind of merging together, and we get all of that through the art and the color choices and all that stuff. So it's just this. The creative team really knows what they're doing here, and I'm excited to see how this ends.
For sure. Yeah. I'm intrigued by everything, and it feels like we're getting a big culmination of all the drama that's been building up with the characters, and I'll be curious to see how much is answered with the mysteries and how much is left ambiguous for our interpretation. I could see it kind of going either way. It feels like they might leave some of it open for us. Yeah. Which is fine. I have no problem with that, but we'll see how it goes. So, what are you giving issue 11 of Nicest in the Lake?
I'm gonna give this a 8.5.
I'm just going to go a nice straight 9 on this. Thought it was excellent. So, good stuff. All right. That'll do the part of the show where we pick our favorite stuff of the week, favorite panel / moment, favorite cover, favorite art, and our top 5 books. So, you're looking at me like I missed a book there.
I thought you had a Patreon.
Oh, I do. I just didn't write it down. Oh, you're right. Yeah. Oh, no, I'm glad you said that. I would have not talked about it and then had to reread it next week. Sorry. I've got a Patreon book. You're right. So coming up now is Animal Man issue 25. So
and I thought you said it at the beginning too. So just maybe you forgot to jot it down. You knew at the time.
But no, I completely forgot. I just didn't rate it in the list. Oh, that's me. That's me being silly. Before we get to that last segment, I have a Patreon book to talk about. Animal Man. Last issue ended with Buddy opening the door and going into what looked like a different dimension or something like that. In this issue, we find out it's called Limbo, and we're getting very meta here. We've got a chimp or some kind of monkey writing the script of the issue under a tree. And this world's very like colorless. Everything's very white, and there's just like some pale blues, but it's mostly just white. With Buddy himself being the only thing with like real color of his yellow and blue suit. And he's going through and he talks to the Merryman, who explains this is Limbo, and this is a place where all the characters who are forgotten go, that no one talks about anymore. And he even says that Animal Man's been here before, implying that Animal Man's been out of continuity before and forgotten, but then left. And once you leave, you forget you were ever here. So it's this very meta thing of like these characters who are been left behind and aren't going to be used anymore. And so there's a couple of interesting references and just kind of they took out, what was the one they said they took out? Buana Beast and Brother Power. If they can leave Limbo and go back into real comics, then there's hope for any of us, kind of thing. So it's not really interesting, and basically to tell Animal Man of a city of knowledge that he can get to, that maybe can give him some answers. And he demands to know where it is, and he goes, and it's kind of this journey issue where he goes walking, but he's given the chimp who was writing the script is become sick and he's dying, and he has to take the chimp with him. So he's literally carrying this chimp in his arms, and he's walking throughout this wasteland, and he runs into the occasional character. He offers one his coat because he's cold. He gets lost in a blizzard. He runs into Mr. Freeze. I have to assume at this point Mr. Freeze was maybe not being used that much, because keep in mind this was before the animated series, so I wonder if Mr. Freeze was like, that kind of revived him back into the the main sort of A-list rogues gallery, and at this point maybe he was kind of like forgotten about. So yeah, he's going through and finding these different characters, and eventually, after it feels like he's been traveling for weeks and whatnot, he basically just finds his house again, and when he opens the door, he sees the skeletons of his cat and dog that he left when he left initially. Mm-hmm. So it's like a lot of time has passed, and he's crying and he's sad, but he pulls the script out of the chimp's hand as the chimp's dying. He actually breaks his hand to get out of it. He reads the script even though he doesn't really want to, and he doesn't want to do what the script says to prove that he has free will, but he does. He cuts a key out of the paper, as in he cuts the script page and makes a key out of it, and he puts it in the door, and it takes him out into another part of the world. And what's so funny about this is that this actually looked kind of familiar to me. this where he is. And I'm like, wait, is he in Scotland? Because it looks like some areas that I can recognize. And he goes up to a door, and the final page is, someone answering the door, and it's just, I'm Grant, are you coming in? And that's the cliffhanger. So I assume Grant Morrison had hair at this point, because I was not expecting hair. I was expecting baldness, because Grant Morrison's been very bald for a long time.
Because that's what we think when we think of them. I have a silhouette in my brain of Grant Morrison, and it doesn't involve hair ever.
No, it really doesn't. So I saw it coming as it was building up to the end, because it just, with how meta this has been, it makes sense that in the cover for the next issue is like a photo of presumably Grant Morrison holding his cat, with just like a drawn Animal Man on his floor, and I'm like, okay, that's a really wildish front cover. So I'm excited to see what it does next and what this conversation is going to be like, because one of the things that comes up in this is that when Animal Man's told by these characters in Limbo that he's a character and everything that's happened to him has been written by someone, he's like, so someone killed my family, someone did all this to me. So this idea that he's going to resent Grant Morrison for putting him through this hellhole is quite an interesting concept. And is there this way that Animal Man can regain his agency through this conversation? I don't know. I'm very curious to see what the point of this conversation is going to be, and what the dramatic sort of conclusion to it is. Because right now, I don't know if I can guess, which is nice. It's invigorating. Like, I'm excited to see where it goes with whatever it's going to do next.
Yeah. If you want to have some fun, just Google Grant Morrison with hair. and an image from the comic book comes up next to a real image, and the artist killed it. So,
very good.
But yeah, Grant Morrison to me always was bald, even when they were a kid, bald. So that's just how it goes. But yeah, no. So I've known about this. This is one of the things in comics that I've known when I started reading, and like I was reading Wizard, and they would talk about this as being like one of the biggest moments in comics. And so like this is what I would talk to Connor about on the side. I'm like, oh, when Pete gets there, when you see where it's going, everything's gonna click. And so as I'm hearing you describe all of these issues as you've gone through this run, like when you talk about the Wile E. Coyote issue and what that's commenting on, and this is coming, everything clicks, and it's just like, man, Morrison really is a genius when it comes to comics. So
yeah, it's just it's kind of, it's not a surprising thing, because like I've always heard that this is a very meta run, and when you're doing the stuff earlier on where you're seeing like the art be unfinished and you're seeing the pencil being drawn over the page and things, what's the most meta thing you could do to end this? Oh, actually have the character meet Grant Morrison. So I'm not shocked it's done this, but I am fascinated to see what it does with it now that we're at that point. So, this is a very good issue. I give it like an 8.5. I think, like all of the teasing and this idea that this secret city that's going to save the day feels a bit of a mirage, but it is real. It's just not like he has to go through his own house to get to it. It's all about going through he literally uses the script page of the comic to access the real world, which makes kind of some sense on a meta level, and that's quite smart. So, but yeah, no, very good. So there you go. That's that's Animal Man issue 25. All right, now we will do our panel / moment of the week. Best art, best cover, top 5. You know the drill. All right, Matt, what was your panel / moment of the week?
Man, do I go Justice Society? Do I go Batman v Robin? I'm gonna go for Dark Crisis, and it's when Superman comes in and stops the Doomsday Punch for John.
Yeah,
that was a really good moment.
Yeah, I could have maybe picked that, but it's also tempted for Alfred's final goodbye moment in Batman versus Robin. But I think if I'm being strict with it, I think I have to go with Nice House on the Lake, and I have to go with the deprivation tank meeting. That entire thing was just very captivating in a way that was very ethereal. That was very good. So I think that's what I'm going with. Cover of the week. There's a bunch of good ones. WildC.A.T.s is alright. Couple of good variants to Dark Crisis. I think the one I'm going to go with though is the Geoff Decal variant from Superman Son of Kal-El. It's just one of those covers where I just like the way it uses lighting and its coloring and its drawing just is really effective to me. It's like John, but there's like a sort of really harsh low light, so there's a lot of shadow from above. It's really good.
I do.
What you got?
So I'm gonna go. It's a variant from the New Golden Age, and it's the Dave Talaski variant with Alan Scott on there. He's all in black. You got the green really popping.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks super, super cool. Also, shouts to the J Hero variant, which has Dr. Fate with a bunch of Dr. Fates around him as he's, freaking out. But yeah, really, really solid stuff here.
All right. Well, what's your art of the week?
This one's tough because there's some really solid art through this week, but I think I'm going to give it to the team of Batman v Robin. I really like Asrar's art. And then when Godlewski picks up, we really didn't notice the shift. Yeah, I'm going to go with Batman versus Robin.
Yeah, I think I have to go with Nice House on the Lake. I don't think anything sticks up to it. It's just as phenomenal. It's all these creepy moments. Yeah, so that's my pick. All right, top 5, Matt, go.
All right, so let's see. Number 1 is Batman vs. Robin. Number 2 is Nice House on the Lake. Number 3 is The Golden Age. Number 4 is Superman, Son of Kal-El. Number 5 is Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Okay. My number 1 is Nice House on the Lake. My number 2 is The New Golden Age. My number 3 is Superman, Son of Kal-El. Number 4, Batman vs. Robin. And number 5, WildC.A.T.s.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, or Batgirl. I'll go WildC.A.T.s just to be more interesting this week. But there you go. That's our picks of the week. So next week from DC Comics, we've got coming out Nightwing issue 98, The Flash 788, Batman Superman World's Finest issue 9, Catwoman 49, Batman One Bad Day, Mr. Freeze, Dark Crisis Young Justice issue 6, Deceased War of the Undead Gods issue 4, Dark Crisis Worlds Without a Justice League Batman issue 1, DC vs. Vampires All Out War issue 5, Black Adam issue 6, Stargirl The Lost Children issue 1, which is the start of a 6-issue miniseries, Titans United Blood Pact issue 3, Harley Quinn the Animated Series Legion of Bats issue 2, GCPD The Blue Wall issue 2, and Looney Tunes 269. So relatively meaty week. I've got a bunch of things there that I'm excited to read. Nightwing obviously at the top of the list, but
yeah, I also caught up with Dark Crisis Young Justice.
Oh, really?
So I'll probably talk about the last issue. Yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to delve back into that, knowing what the villain is in It was interesting because there was a big split online of people getting very upset. However, I like the commentary that it gets at, that, you know, Young Justice is this kind of lost group where you have the original Titans, and then you had this new group of like John and Damian and those characters. And then these ones kind of got lost in the mix. And the idea of Mickey Mixapitalik is these are his favorites, and he wanted to give them an Earth where they were relevant. And there's some very meta comments coming from people, and a lot of people, I feel like, took offense to some of the stuff that Fitzmartin was saying. I enjoyed it, and I love these characters.
Well, you're
just
reading the new issue next week?
Yeah, so I'll be finishing that up. I got caught up on 2 or 3 issues last weekend. So
that's good.
Yeah, and I enjoyed what they were saying. Like, it's not like necessary reading for Dark Crisis, but I appreciate that they're trying to make these characters relevant. So, but yeah, so I'll be reading that one for sure.
Well, you can report on that, and I'll report on GCPD, the Blue Wall, because I like issue 1 of that. I'm looking forward to issue 2.
We're probably skipping the Batman book, even though I got to know why he's all clockwork. I might peek at it at my comic shop and just see.
Oh, the Dark Crisis Batman.
Yeah, the Dark Crisis one.
Yeah, you're reading the Mr. Freeze book though, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, One Bad Day. Yeah.
So far, those have not missed. So I'm not gonna miss that one. So, but yeah. So yeah, meaty week like you said, but we'll get through it.
Yeah, meaty week plus probably solicits next week. So look forward to that, everyone. But you can let us know what you thought of this week's comics in the comments, or you can get us on Twitter at DC Comics Podcast, and you can support the show like all of our Patreon producers do. So thank you to Tyler Heston, Pelicius, David Sharp, Bordeaux, Christopher Moy, David Brown, Al Tradesman, and Alison M. Fordyce. They're all producers, but you can support us for any amount you wish over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. The $5 tier and up, you get early access to the show whenever it's ready on the Saturday night, as opposed to the Sunday time. Depending on your time zone, it might be early Sunday morning, but regardless, if that is of interest, you can have a look and see if you want to support the show that way. And of course, just share us out, and just that whatever, all and any help like that does mean a lot. So thank you very much. And of course, is there have I missed that? No, I've said everything, right? I'm doing this in a weird way. I don't know. I don't know. My brain's fried, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. We always appreciate it. Keep reading DC Comics, and remember to never get lost in the Speed Force.